Lights, camera, action. Yep, that's right. If there's one thing that entertains an audience, it's a good action movie. Luckily, the creative artists of the human race have been able to provide quite a few masterpieces, and the TV region's here to honour them with its top 50 most badass action scenes in the movies. If I'm going to be kicking off such an epic list, then it only makes sense for me to use the overhead shootout scene from John Wick 4. Well, apart from the fact that the whole sequence feels like a badass video game, the action choreography on display is out of this world. This could be a Hotline Miami reference. I mean, there's even a dog attacking. All that's missing is a scene involving knocking someone out with a door, but knowing this franchise, that ain't much of an ask. I also want to shout out the dragon breath bullets from this scene, especially when John used them on that one dude who got lit on fire and then ran into the other room only to get burned again. Bro was destined to be roasted, wasn't he? But yeah, everything about this scene was perfect, and it goes to show how the franchise is building on its strengths with each sequel. The John Wick series is proof that modern action movies can also be allowed to have amazing cinematography instead of shaky cams and a million cuts per minute. At this point, I say we should have our own John Wick cinematic universe. Who knows, maybe a multiverse concept will work with this one. James Cameron may not be the filmmaker he once was in the 80s and early 90s, but his films do make billions of dollars at the box office without fail. We already know of the juggernaut that is 2009's Avatar, so The Way of Water came in with a lot of expectations, and it somewhat managed to live up to a certain standard. Of course, my focus is the action in the film, which was surprisingly subdued, especially if you look at the runtime of the movie. The final battle, though, really hit hard because we got to see what a mother's true rage can look like. Yeah, sure, there's the whole revenge against Miles angle that Jake primarily executes, but to see Zoe Saldana pulling off such a realistic depiction of Neytiri in pain really enhanced the scene a lot more than I'd expected. Oh yeah, there's also the amazing sequences that come right before the end where the Na'vi take on the humans in an epic, watery battle. The creatures of Avatar never cease to amaze me, and seeing them in action once again after 13 years was a treat to the eyes. I was hoping to see the actual end of Miles at the hands of Jake, but I guess we can't have everything we ask for, can we? You could say that this video is the magnum opus of all my badass offerings as the TV region, so Denzel Washington was always going to be a part of it. Robert McCall is no stranger to my list, and his takedown of the Russians will forever remain an unforgettable moment from the Equalizer. There are so many things that go right over here, and it begins right from the time McCall places the skull in front of his target. It was immediate foreshadowing, and the countdown sequence that follows right after was truly memorable. Bro was disappointed in himself just because he took a little longer than 16 seconds to end a whole room filled with Russians. Like, these are the same guys who go viral on TikTok and Instagram for playing with bears and lions. If I were to make a guess, I'd say he probably lost a couple of seconds when he took a little extra time to rub it in the face of his final attack victim. Also, the fact that he skips the "who are you" question and continues with his countdown till the boss breathes his last was pure, unadulterated, badass behaviour. Yep, he should have just handed over the girl instead of crying over $9,000.
Your heart's beating 3 times the normal rate. It's because you're losing so much blood. You should have taken the money.
How old are you?
26, 1,000. 27, 1,000.
Yeah, man!
any movie's got Tom Cruise in it, at this point you should know it's going to be filled with action. Top Gun Maverick was the fresh injection of fuel that Hollywood needed to reignite the box office flame it was missing for so long. Apart from the many other reasons as to why this film was a success, I want to bring to your attention the dogfight scene featuring Maverick and Rooster. You know what's really great about this scene? The fact that the enemy actually has the kind of skills that you'd expect from someone at such a level. The evasive maneuver he pulls off even had Maverick go like, WTF.
You got him, Mav, you got him. Taking a shot. What the?
The reason I'm saying this is because it raised the stakes and made us realise that the heroes weren't going to get off so easily here. Well, yeah, they do end up winning towards the end, but it's the fight that counts, isn't it? It's amazing how the supposedly world-ending scenes in post-Endgame superhero movies don't even give you a fraction of the tension as the situations in these scenes do. See, this is why Tom Cruise is and will always be the GOAT of contemporary action movies.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your savior speaking.
Hey, Hangman, you look good.
I am good, Rooster.
Christian Bale may be the most popular version of Batman in the post-2000s era, but he does have a lot of other acting credits to his name that aren't Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. However, I feel like there was some residue of the OG Giga Chad character still left in Bale when he decided to play John Preston in Equilibrium. There are times in the gun kata shootout scene where it almost feels like bro might just sneak up on one of his opponents and go like, "Hey Paul." I guess it just goes on to show that you really can't taunt a guy like John, otherwise you're going to regret it just like these guards did. That's right, everybody's a gangster till someone says, "Not without incident." To be fair though, those guards had worse aim than stormtroopers from the OG Star Wars trilogy, so they really didn't give themselves a chance. Also, can we digest the fact that bro was so ballsy that he threw his extra mags at the enemy before he even attacked them? The movie has the perfect sense of cheese to be an all-time great when it comes to undiscovered films.
Where's the needle? Didn't need it.
Tom Cruise strikes again, and this time we've got the Mission Impossible franchise in review. I honestly don't know what to say about this scene because it's got a side character beating the daylights out of the main protagonist as well as the main antagonist. Liang Yang is an exceptional stuntman, and he walks the walk in this scene where he owns Tom Cruise as well as Henry Cavill. I guess you could say that the side quest was tougher than the final boss. I love the choices they make with each other's style and physicality too. Henry Cavill is a freaking giant, so they have him doing boxing and throws. Tom Cruise is smaller but quick, so he deals in scrappy hits and elbow throws. And this side villain thing is just amazing, which is why he's holding his own so well in a variety of circumstances. Ethan Hunt and August Walker may have had their own scores to settle later in the film, but they gave it their best shot over here and still fell short. Thank God for Ilsa coming in when she did, because I don't think Ethan would have been able to get out of this one. Well, I suppose it's true when they say, no matter how good you are at something, there's always an Asian who's better than you at it.
Plenty of time.
If we're talking about action scenes, then I'm obviously not going to restrict myself to just one faction of the world, right? Jackie Chan's the undisputed king of martial arts films simply by virtue of the number of movies he's been involved with. Now, 1998's Who Am I may not be remembered or known by the Gen Z kids of today, but it's got a brilliant fight scene that not many can emulate. Of course, Jackie Chan doesn't need anyone to vouch for him, but I was also in awe of Ron Smorenberg in this fight scene. I find it incredible that this is his first on-screen battle, because just look at how well he does in keeping up with the rhythm and adapting to Jackie's style. That in itself is an incredible feat. The whole choreography of the fight is fantastic, but what really makes this scene so enjoyable is these small bits of comedy between the characters, like Ron taking off his tie, Jackie and Ron scratching their shins after the kicking showdown, or when Jackie tries to put Ron on his feet so he can finish him. In short, the whole fight is pure gold. Hats off to everyone involved in this scene because they sure don't make films like this anymore. Yep, this is mostly remembered as a viral meme, but don't forget that we see Captain America beating up a whole group of trained Hydra fighters within less than 3 business minutes. Pulling off such an amazing scene in such a restricted space was a highlight for the MCU, as it proved the studio didn't need to rely on CGI for every single fight sequence. One thing I like about this scene is that it subtly hints at Cap's intelligence. He's mainly known for his strength, bravery and general sense of morality, but look at how he handles the situation here. He noticed the suspicious behaviour of his fellow companions on the elevator, and this included the sweating, rapid mumbling, fidgeting and other little minor acts. He could tell that more agents coming onto the elevator meant that they were trying to corner him, and he also figured out what was going to happen but maintained his calm without showing any sign of fear. Then he delivers an epic one-liner and obliterates all of them without breaking a sweat.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
I also want to remind you that he's still holding back here because he doesn't want anyone to lose their lives in the process. I mean, sure, he's got super soldier serum inside him, but he's not the Hulk, so taking down these many dudes is definitely a flex.
It kind of feels personal.
I really haven't given Michael Mann his flowers as often as I should. The man has made some amazing action movies throughout an illustrious career, so for this entry I'm looking at 2004's Collateral. Tom Cruise has pretty much dominated the first section of this video, but in this case he's not exactly the hero. The club shootout scene is particularly impressive because of the way it's shot in the middle of chaos. First you have all the people at the party dancing as if they all need to use the restroom, and then you've got them panicking after hearing all those gunshots. Vincent can stick to his mission even in the middle of all these obstructions, which explains why I hold him in such high regard. I mean, this might be Tom Cruise's most underrated role of all time if you ask me. Now, this may be a minor detail, but I love the transition Cruise does to investigative mode. You can see how he immediately turns into a cold, calculated killer as he spots the target. Bro definitely had to pay the bills.
Ugly mother.
It doesn't get more badass than this if you ask me. It's literally the Terminator taking on the Predator. Arnold Schwarzenegger has been a part of multiple classics, but when it comes to iconic lines, there are only a couple that can top "Get to the chopper!" Well, in this case, there's no chopper, but a whole lot of action between Dutch and the Predator that ended up taking down his whole team of macho gigachads. I wonder what Michael Helm would have done if he were up against one of these bad boys. Anyway, what really works in this scene is how Dutch gradually mentally turns into his enemy, relying on his hunting instincts and using traps, homemade weapons, as well as a disguise, thereby changing the rules of the game and becoming a predator himself. This was the turning point of the movie. Before this, the Predator was in control and could dictate how and when it would strike by virtue of its near-perfect camouflage and deadly shoulder-mounted plasma cannon. But with Dutch covered in mud and armed with comparatively primitive weapons, he was now in control and dictating how and when he would strike. The Predator was drawn to heat to hunt its prey, and in a like manner it was drawn to the heat of the bonfire that Dutch had set up, only to become the prey itself. Bro pretty much pulled off an Uno reverse in the most badass way possible. Destroy the sign. 30 years later, this scene still packs a solid punch and a lot of kicks too. We all know how awesome Jet Li is as a martial arts expert, but Billy Chow is equally as menacing here in a fight that lasts for almost 10 minutes. The best part is that you don't even feel bored throughout this battle because there's so much happening in each moment. Chen Zhen knew he was up against a serious contender in General Fujita, but he made sure to maintain his focus, and that's why he comes out as the victor. The detailing in this sequence is solid, especially those side attacks that Chen Zhen was using even if General Fujita was blocking his primary blows. Having said that, the way Fujita just takes the flying kicks and flings it back at Chenzen was admirable. It was a super badass showcasing of skills from both sides, and neither one gave up right until the general decided to play dirty and then met his end. Like, come on bro, it was such an amazing fight up until that point, so what was the need to bring a sword to a fist fight? Luckily our man Jet Li had his own belt for backup and ended up things rather easily at that point.
You better get it up. I'm gonna have to kill you. Kingsman!
I'll always maintain that 1982's Blade Runner is way better than the 2017 version, even though Denis Villeneuve's version ain't that bad either. However, a classic will always remain a classic, so I just had to highlight the rooftop chase scene where Roy Batty goes after Rick Deckard. The way the chase plays out is so surreal and almost feels like a horror movie as Batty smashes his face out of a freaking wall, which I always felt was an homage to The Shining. Anyway, the chase that follows is pretty badass, but what also sells it is the emotional depth that Roy eventually explains before shutting down for good. He could have easily taken down Deckard as he was hanging on for dear life, but that was never his goal, was it? The Tears in the Rain monologue has got to be one of the most beautiful yet poignant scenes I've ever witnessed. I mean, he might have been a replicant, but Roy made sure to extend his life for as long as he could do so that he could show Deckard the replicants also feared death. Also, here's a weird thing that I noticed. Roy dies in fictional 2019, and the actor who played him passed away in actual 2019. That's pretty spooky, isn't it?
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
Are you okay? I'm trying to get away from this mountain!
Tom Cruise is killing it on this list, which means he should never be taken lightly as an action star. Bro's done the most death-defying stunts for so long that it almost feels like bread and butter to him at this point. Now, in the latest installment of the Mission Impossible franchise, there was one stunt that everyone was talking about, and it's a massive jump off the top of a cliff. Mind you, that is badass enough for the fictional Ethan to do such a thing, but it only becomes better when you know that Tom Cruise pulled it off by himself. I swear, if you check out the making of this scene on YouTube, you'll realize that it's a lot scarier than it looks. One of the traits that I love about Ethan Hunt is the whole I'll figure it out mentality. So whatever happens, you'll find a way to face a problem regardless of the obstacles. I also love for once doing a crazy stunt wasn't Ethan's original idea. Benji just felt the bro's done it so many times before that he'd find a way to make it work. What can't Donnie Yen do at this point? Bro produced a movie based on demigods, played the main character, and ended up defeating an entire population of skilled fighters. I've seen some ridiculous action sequences in my life, but as far as 2023 goes, this was easily the most flamboyant one of them all. Like, just look at the power on display over here. Bro spares no one mercy and just runs through them like a house of cards. It's got amazing action choreography, and even the set design is pretty impressive, considering Chow Feng uses whatever support he can get from the pillars and the walls to effect his lethal moves. Yeah, he's got magic as well, but the raw strength he showcases here is on a whole other level. Everyone was mocking him at first, and that one fool even refused to drink with Feng, but I guess he got an instant reply to that one, didn't he? What I don't get though is the fact that Feng gets taken down later with just a stab to his back, that too by a woman. Like, come on bro, don't tell me you got tired from taking the whole world down. Russo brothers will probably only be remembered for their work on the Avengers, but seeing what they could do in The Grey Man made me wonder if they let themselves get carried away with the MCU hype. Now, I'm not saying this film is a masterpiece or anything like that, but there are some really promising moments, such as the part where Gentry fights off all those goons in the plane and makes his escape right before the whole thing crashes. It reminded me of 90s action films, and the way Ryan Gosling fights with his techniques and speed almost makes it look like a superhero movie, which is fair considering the Russo brothers also helmed Captain America the Winter Soldier. That little dash of pinkish smoke encompassing the action on display was a nice little touch, and I don't mind that the sequences are a bit over the top in terms of the explosions and stuff. After all, if we're used to angry green giants and dudes in red latex, then I'm sure we can handle a highly skilled fighter. Yeah, I'm not sure what the critics were smoking when they decided to bash this film, but I'd say it's a lot better than most of the other stuff out there streaming right now. Oh yeah, I was just waiting to bring Nicolas Cage into the mix. Bro's been Hollywood's favourite madman since he started acting and has maintained that reputation with a lot of sass and savagery. Seeing him as a barman knockoff in 2010's Kick-Ass was cool, and he made good on the comparison by taking down all those guards in the warehouse scene. Normally you'd expect a lot of shouting, screaming and unnecessary violence, but in this case I'd say that Big Daddy really needed to pull out his best moves. There's no mercy to be shown, and some of the shots he lands are as badass as they can get. I think the fact that Nick Cage is being shown as a serious fighter over here accentuates the overall vibe of the scene, because we'd normally be looking for something to laugh at. Rest assured, there ain't much laughing in this brutal assault as Bro keeps reloading his shotgun even after there's not one left to kill. It's probably because such things have become a force of habit for him, but yeah, I'd say this gave me the biggest adrenaline rush from the whole movie. Man, at this point, I wouldn't even mind a Big Daddy spin-off show because we need more characters like him. Say what you will about Ben Affleck, but you can't deny the training he put in to become this strong for this role. Batman really had no intentions of sparing anyone from Martha's kidnappers, and he made sure to come prepared for it. I mean, Batman's taken literal bullet shots and still not flinching because he had all the protection he needed to counter it. One may say that Bruce Wayne lost his mind and went wild over a woman who shared the same name as his mother, but our man was very calculative here, and I'm glad he was the one to save Superman's mom in this case.
Kill her!
Jason Bourne's always been teased as a wannabe American James Bond, but I don't think that's a fair assessment of the character, especially if you look at some of the fight scenes. Take the one against Desh, for example. Bro had to run through multiple buildings and rooms just to reach the dude and started fighting without even catching a breather. I love the way the camera followed Bourne's jump through the window. It's really an incredible sequence that captures the desperation of two men fighting for their lives. The rapid movements were pretty impressive, and you wouldn't normally associate a guy like Matt Damon with the art of fighting, but he proved us all wrong with these skills. Now, Desh is obviously a skilled opponent, which is why it took him so long to get defeated, but I'm glad we got to see such an extended fight scene. Plus, the sound editing and cinematography are impeccable. There's a reason why this film won editing awards at the Oscars. Oh yeah, and I suppose this scene proves John Wick wasn't the first guy to use a book in a battle. Bro literally beat his opponent with the power of knowledge.
She went to heaven to look for mommy.
What to sell when you're dead? Oh man, Korean films really are the hidden gems of post-2000s foreign cinema. When it comes to 2010's Man from Nowhere, all I can say is this film is seriously underrated. It's one of my favourite Asian action films alongside The Raid and Ip Man. The whole revenge flick thing might not be a new genre, but Man from Nowhere executes it so well, and that too with depth. I don't usually go into an action movie expecting feels, but the entire story was nothing short of tragic. When it comes to action sequences, look no further than the final battle where Tae-sik mistakenly believes that Man-seok ended up harvesting So-mi's eyes. Bro lost his mind instantly and shot everyone down without mercy. It was so sudden and unexpected that it made Man-seok's chickens run away from the scene. The real battle though is between Tae-sik and Ram Rowan, because those two really turned up the heat. Sure, there's a lot of blood and gore on display, but those punches and swipes were much cooler to watch. I kind of felt bad for Ram Rowan because he was the one who protected So-mi from harm and put the gang surgeon's eyes in the container. Bro was supposed to be a villain, but turned out to be a side hero. I honestly don't even know how to describe this scene. I would have called Tien Superman or something if I wasn't already a hardcore fan of Kal-El. This isn't a normal fight scene. This is the granddaddy of all fight scenes. Bro started off with one opponent, then two, then three, and then it just kept increasing till I stopped keeping count. From a technical perspective, the combination of varied martial arts forms is exciting to watch. Also, the fact that these techniques and weapons were the most intrinsic methods of combat of those times hits you hard and urges you to learn more about it. Another thing that made this scene even better is the fact that the mercenaries were coming at Tien with all kinds of weapons from every corner of Asia. I'm not joking. You had katanas, tantos, kamas, kusurigamas, ninja claws, push daggers, tridents, spears, Chinese straight swords, broadswords, triple staffs, guandaos, Indian falchions, scimitars, and overgrown fingernails too. Yeah, that's right. Your boy is a weapons aficionado. But on a serious note, Tony Jaa really is a master of his craft. Also, huge shout out to that elephant that gave Tien a much needed assist. Bro even used him as a battle station. Oh man, it really must be wild to have such a long take, that too in a hospital without any cuts. John Woo really does know how to entertain a crowd, which is why this sequence in 1992's Hard Boiled is a fan favourite in Asia. It's got all the action you need, especially with Alan and Tequila going as hard as they possibly can. Okay, there's the part where Alan mistakenly shoots a cop, but Tequila made sure to clarify his doubts, even if it meant having to add some extra garnishing to the truth. Bro was handing out philosophy lessons right in the middle of an intense shootout, so I think that's more than enough to explain the dynamic between the characters. The intensity is well captured, which is where the concept of doing this as one long shot comes in handy. It must have been a pain to pull off, but it did have its just rewards. Also, here's some more film trivia for you. The most amazing part of this scene is that they shot this on the same floor. The crew basically cleaned up the floor and set up so quickly that it was all done by the time Tequila and Alan stepped out of the elevator. John Woo should probably start a house cleaning service on the side if you can get people to clean up this quickly.
I'm drunk.
Jackie Chan has everything when it comes to Kung Fu. From being a comedian to a real martial arts fighter, he's never failed to entertain us, and it's always fun to watch him during his fight scenes. That's exactly why the final fight from Drunken Master 2 would be the best way to explain my statement. Taking on John and his kicks was tough enough as it is, but then he had another goon to help him out, and Wong also had the issue of promising not to use his drunken fighting style. Luckily, Bro came to his senses and ended up boosting himself with a lot of booze. The way Wong punches his chest after drinking almost felt like a battle cry, which adds more intensity to the fight. Of course, it's the comedy that sets it apart and makes it unique, but I also want to add that Ken Lo, who plays John, is an amazing fighter with some serious moves. Just look at those kicks he was lashing out without even breaking a sweat. That too against a master of the game. See, it's when you get a skilled villain that a hero's victory feels more deserved.
Can't you teach me now? Use my style!
We're halfway through now, so I thought I'd give you a treat for this entry. We've all heard countless jokes about Chuck Norris, but you want to know why it's not the same with Bruce Lee? It's because he did the unthinkable, defeat the king of the bro memes. The final battle in Where the Dragon was a blockbuster affair because we saw two martial arts icons facing off against each other in what I would say was a very respectful display. There were no cheap tricks or dirty moves, and even after Tang ends cold, he prays for his soul, which means that bro had earned his opponent's respect. The fluidity of Bruce Lee's punches, counters and kicks were like poetry in motion. He beat Colt mentally before giving him a thorough beating, and this proves why fighting is just as much of a mental game as it is a physical one. Iron Man versus Thanos was fan service, Batman versus Superman was surreal, but this was legendary on a whole other level. Don't you know, legend says that the energy released during this fight was the real cause of global warming. However, the real star of the show must be that little kitten, because both fighters only began after she gave the signal.
Afraid of death. You're like me.
The only thing that you and I have in common, Mr. Creedy, is we're both about to die.
Yep, there was no way I was going to miss out on mentioning the iconic V from a film that was too ahead of its time. V for Vendetta may have had us all questioning the very essence of a government, but I don't want to get political, so let's just focus on when our beloved anti-hero goes out there, takes down all of Creedy's men with ease. Of course, I can talk about his memorable lines, but
Beneath this mask, there is more than flesh.
I also want to talk about the character's true importance towards the context of the film. The thing I found most interesting about the experiments conducted on V was that he wasn't meant to be great or become something better. This wasn't like Captain America or Deadpool, because both had goals. V was just a lab rat who was tossed away the second he lost his use or purpose. But somehow, some way he changed. Not with the powers of a superhero, but with the heart of a painless monster. He fights not through sheer willpower and courage, but through greed and his complete lack of self-preservation. Pair this with his nerves being mutated or just completely burnt out, and he's the perfect person to function solely as an idea, which in his own words is bulletproof. Damn, I suppose I've just become a bit too philosophical myself over there.
My turn.
In 1999, the world experienced something revolutionary, and I'm not talking about the shift into the millennia. I mean the release of The Matrix, which has inspired countless films after it, and even popularized the use of bullet time, which is kind of like a trademark thing for the series. We get to see it first in the rooftop shootout scene where Neo and Trinity take on the agents, but it's when the final boss arrives that things get interesting. Neo somewhat panics upon seeing him and begins to unleash all his bullets, but can't land a single shot, which in turn leads to him to try and do the same thing when Agent Smith fires at him as well. The slow-mo dodging really enhanced the overall sequence, and I've got to hand it to Trinity for keeping it cool even after Neo got shot. It's a brilliant shift that happens out of the blue, even though you know she's supposed to be right there. See, this is what happens when you don't pay attention to women. However, the real moral of this story is that you should always aim for an agent's legs. I mean, if they can move their legs that fast, at least you get some wicked dance moves before you bite the dust.
Dodge this.
Ah yes, it's the maestro himself in a film that truly redefined the use of special effects. The hallway fight scene between Arthur and the projection was epic beyond imagination, and there's a reason this scene looks so classy and proper. It's because the whole thing was shot without the use of CGI. Yeah, that's right, they built the whole spinning hallway set with Joseph Gordon-Levitt doing his own stunts, which goes on to show the dedication that's gone into making this film. Christopher Nolan admitted to taking inspiration from 2001: A Space Odyssey for the structure of the hallway set, because Stanley Kubrick did something very similar all the way back in 1968. I also want to point out that there are parallels between this scene and a sequence in the anime film Paprika, which was released 4 years before Inception. Either way, it doesn't take anything away from the fact that it's an awesome fight scene and gave the audience a unique take on what an action sequence can accomplish for them. Oh yeah, a huge shout out to Yusuf for causing the whole thing to happen in the first place. Of course, bro also made sure to keep everyone safe in the car chase sequence, but I guess no one's going to remember that. This scene is a perfect example of how you can make an intense scene in a movie without having to resort to any kind of violence. Breaking into the vault was obviously a task and a half, but to pull off the download with all that tension really drove me up the wall. Ethan Hunt always likes to pull it close, and this case is no different at all. I'm sure everyone in the cinema would have been super quiet while watching this play out, because it must have given them all kinds of anxiety, especially when Franz almost messes up because of a little mouse. Like, come on bro, aren't you supposed to be Leon the professional? Anyway, it's thanks to this little hiccup that the scene truly makes an impact, and I'm glad that Ethan eventually manages to get the job done, even though he may have left a massive piece of evidence behind in that knife. I also want to point out the fact that it was a wise choice not to add any music here, because that would have dissolved the tension completely. Oh yeah, and here's another piece of trivia. Tom Cruise kept touching the floor and eventually figured out he needed a little more weight on his feet, so he managed to pull off that balance shot by putting pennies in his shoes.
Miss.
I absolutely love parkour, and no, I don't mean the one we saw Michael, Dwight and Andy pulling off in The Office.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Office. In the case of Daniel Craig's first ever venture into the world of 007, he makes quite the mark over here when he chases a rather fit and athletic monocar all over Madagascar. I love the way James Bond, while clearly not as talented in parkour as the guy he's chasing, uses his brawn, fitness, intelligence and determination to get where he needs to be in this scene. Using 7 minutes of pure action to shape a character and distinguish Daniel Craig from all the other previous Bonds was an incredible filmmaking tutorial. It's pretty textbook as well. Every cut there is there for a reason. Every shot has an identifiable purpose and clear content. Of course, there are many ridiculous things being done, but it's still somewhat believable and physically feels real. All in all, this was an indelible intro of a new and different, physically relentless Bond. Also, it was pretty badass of him to blow up the whole embassy, including his target. Bro got fed up with running around for so long, didn't he?
This is where we hold them! This is where we fight!
Oh yeah, it's time to bring out the big guns, and in this case, I literally mean it for the muscle bros. Watching this movie would probably increase anyone's testosterone by 300% because there's way too much masculinity in it for anyone to stomach. Seeing Leonidas fighting his own battles in such badass fashion reminded me of the line Achilles used in Troy. Also, I love the overwhelming power that they have in the battles of the Hot Gads. Their Spartan shields are almost like giant gates of their own, opening briefly to kill, then slamming shut again. Gerard Butler really gave it his all over here, and you can feel the emotions not just in his words, but also in his actions, which are perfectly complemented by Zack Snyder's love for hyper-stylized violence. I swear, man, Spartans aren't warriors, they're effectively killing machines. Technically speaking, this is a stunning sequence, and I don't care if it's historically inaccurate, because it still serves its purpose, which is to pump up whoever's watching.
Well, let's give them something to drink!
Imagine being part of a team that has Don Draper and the freaking Punisher working together to commit crimes. That would be the dream, but Baby gets to live it in 2017's Baby Driver. This opening sequence has got more Fast and Furious vibes than the franchise's last 3 films combined. Almost 7 years later, it's still one of the best opening scenes in the 2010s in modern cinema. The thrills, the speed, and the synchronization of the music with the car is everything you need for a memorable sequence and a massive surge of adrenaline. It's a non-stop musical that doesn't feel like 6 minutes of Baby just cruising as if he doesn't need training wheels. I swear, he makes it look so easy evading so many cops on a freaking chopper at the same time. On top of that, the shades make him look more badass as well. If Gen Z kids can be as cool as this, then I don't mind being friends with them. Okay, so I may have made fun of the Fast and Furious franchise in the last entry, but that was only meant for the last 3 movies, okay? Fast 5 doesn't qualify there, which is why I've chosen the vault robbery scene to make its way here. Look, I know there must be a million things wrong with the physics and logic of this sequence, but hey, everyone remembers it because they were thoroughly entertained. Vin Diesel and Paul Walker gave us everything here, whether it was evading cops while driving with a vault as heavy as a dinosaur, smashing the same vault through countless buildings, or even using it as a weapon against the cop cars. The overall execution of this chase in terms of technical direction was amazing, and even though a lot of people watching at the time knew it wasn't possible, they were still cheering for Dom and Brian to pull off a heist of a lifetime. Now this scene is what you'd call the OG Temple Run before it was even a thing. Indiana Jones managed to defeat all the criticism around it and went on to become one of the most successful franchises of all time, until Disney decided to reboot it again with something not so successful. That's not the point here though. I want to shower my praises upon the temple escape scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The reason why I love this sequence is because it teaches us that making it out alive is better than getting the treasure. Indy must run and jump his way out of trouble after the golden idol sets off the temple's traps, but it doesn't just end there. Bro barely makes it out of one obstacle, then he's presented with the next as all the tribe members chase after him once he hands over the idol to Renee. Overall, this was a perfect scene because we need to consider the era that it was released in. Raiders of the Lost Ark was shot in 1980 with a relatively low budget of about $30 million, and with a script in process during the filming. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas improvised some of the scenes while on set. You must be amazingly creative to make such a compelling film while making the script as the production goes.
No time to argue. Throw me the idol, I throw you the Wick. Give me the whip! Adios, señor.
Don't tear up my car, all right?
You think catching the bus to work every morning is a pain? Well, think again. 1994 Speed is the perfect example of what an entertaining action movie is supposed to be, and it's a real shame we don't get to see films like these made anymore. Jack Traven is one of Keanu Reeves' most memorable roles, and this sequence was absolutely thrilling to watch. If you look at it, this is just Jack trying to board the bus, but you also need to take into consideration that it can't go below 50 miles an hour. Keeping that in mind, this was really a tense moment that could make or break the entire plot of the film. Luckily, after a lot of swaying and complaining from the Jaguar owner, Jack finally manages to make it inside. Here's another fun fact. Keanu Reeves convinced the director to let him jump onto the bus himself. Director Jan de Bont accepted it, but asked the bus driver and car driver to go at a slower speed so Keanu could make that jump in real time. Bro really does it all, doesn't he?
What?
The bomber is back.
This is as brutal a scene as you're ever going to see in a British action film, and I'm so glad that it happens to be from Kingsman. Harry Hart is normally as cool as a cucumber, but all it takes is one change of tune and bro turns more murderous than your average American. I wonder if that could be used as an argument in court. It wasn't my fault, Your Honor. They played Freebird. The music made me do it. Jokes aside, except for a couple of moments, the fact that Colin Firth did this scene by himself without a stunt double at his age just makes it more badass. Also, props to the cameraman because, jeez, shooting this must have been a task. No pun intended. At the end of the day, this was a supercharged moment that serves as an action highlight from the entire film. Robert Patrick may not have been a very memorable villain from the latest season of Reacher, but the one role that has cemented him as a legendary actor is the T-1000 from Terminator 2. The motorbike and truck chase scene is peak level action, and kudos to the whole team that was involved here. Man, watching Arnold Schwarzenegger reload a freaking shotgun while on a motorbike has got to be one of the coolest things in the history of cinema. Everything about the stunts and the overall direction of this scene is just spot on, and it had everyone striving to be exactly like the Terminator. I also got to give props to James Cameron for his attention to detail in action, which is what makes his pre-2000 stuff so great. If you watch Robert Patrick when he starts firing on the Terminator in the hallway, he doesn't flinch. This apparently took a great amount of practice to achieve, but Cameron was insistent. As he said, a machine would not flinch. We're back to the foreign classics, and this time we're doing one of the best Korean films of all time, Oldboy. Park Chan-wook has an interesting mind, and this movie is a prime example of it. Now, I don't want to get into the more disturbing aspects of this film, so I'll just focus on the best hallway fight of all time. Film bros will know exactly what I'm talking about, because Dae-suo is relentless over here. There are way too many dudes coming at him for anyone's liking, but he doesn't hold back even when he gets beaten, and trust me, he does get beaten a lot. My favourite aspect is when Dae-soo starts out the fight being very aggressive. However, he quickly realizes that this was a mistake as he gets surrounded and easily overwhelmed. Then, after he gets stabbed, he changes tactics and plays dead until he can surprise his opponents. Instead of trying to take the whole group at once, he plays defensively, waiting for them to attack so he can dodge, then counter. This shows that while Dae-soo is tough enough to take a whole lot of punishment, he's also smart enough to recognize when he can't force his way through a problem. The fact that he was able to come out on top after all this madness goes to show how determined he is as a character, even though he's nowhere close to being a role model for anyone. We've finally made it to the top 10, so I'm kicking off with Donnie Yen's brutal assassination of karate in this scene from Ip Man. This dude is probably the most neutral and cold martial artist master I've ever seen in a movie. The way he effortlessly makes a mockery of his opponents over here is truly badass. You know, I suppose this is what they mean when they say you can only be peaceful if you're capable of violence. If you can't beat up anybody, then you're not peaceful, you're just harmless. I don't know about anyone else, but I would have probably just acted as if I was knocked out, because there's no way I'm getting my butt handed to me by a peaceful Donnie Yen. Bro really must have had 10 men's worth of issues if he went this far to take down all those black belts. If you ever want to learn how to fight till the death, then you don't need to go anywhere else but this clip of Rama and the assassin obliterating each other in the kitchen. The moves on display are so smooth and rapid that I'd probably be knocked out before I'd even have a chance to give up. The most unrealistic thing about this scene is probably the fact that the kitchen is spotless and clean. Of course, it's Rama who emerges as the victor, but make no mistake, the assassin could have won just as much as our hero. It was really hard to set these two guys apart, and it didn't matter how many blows they were landing on each other, we were entertained for the entirety of this almost 7-minute sequence. They say you should be one with nature, but I'm not sure they had this in mind when they said it. The fight between Master Li and Gen Yu on top of those forest trees was a unique depiction, and even though it may look excessive at times, I've got to give credit to all the technical skills it must have taken to shoot it. Of course, there is a mystical element to the film, which is why this scene is believable, and I must give a shout out to Master Li because bro was messing with Gen all the way. Even towards the end, when he's dared to take back the sword in 3 moves, he does it in 2 without breaking a sweat. Now that's what I call a real alpha male. Hey look, it's the most badass Christmas film of all time. Die Hard was a revolution for teenagers back in the day because they instantly looked at John McClane as an idol. Now, we all know how chaotic the end of the movie gets, especially when all those explosions are being caused by a chopper that's supposed to help our hero, but John is all about taking a leap of faith, so he performs an epic jump and eventually lands exactly where he needs to be. I freaking love it when they bang out to that wide shot of the building exploding, whereas the camera is clear on the other side of town. It makes the scene seem even more realistic. Also, I love how the film always finds a way to be creative, because they pretty much ticked every box on the way to destroying that building.
I'll never even think about going up in a tall building again.
It would be a crime if I didn't include anything from the most epic trilogy of all time, so here's the final battle from Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. This is actually a longer scene broken down into multiple parts because you've got so much going on. Whether it's the squad getting ready for battle or even Gandalf coming to the rescue with Shadowfax and some reinforcements, to the final victory, it was such a treat to watch Aragorn and co making their way through what clearly looked like a lost cause. The fact that Peter Jackson could give us an epic series of movies more than 20 years ago really says a lot about how Lord of the Rings has stood the test of time and is still one of the most popular franchises in the modern era.
Let this be the hour when we draw swords together.
It doesn't matter if you're hiring 1 assassin or 88, you just don't mess with the fury of a pissed off bride. Quentin Tarantino has always had a passion for excessively ridiculous action sequences, but he also knows how to pull them off with quality and finesse. Uma Thurman does a badass job as well because it takes a lot to maintain that kind of intensity when you're fighting 88 crazy assassins. I like how she fought all of them without any reservation and didn't even care if she was killing anyone in the process either. The bride even topped it off by spanking the kid who clearly wasn't meant for this kind of lifestyle. However, I'm not sure if bro's going to be fine after watching so much death and murder in front of his own eyes. I really regret not being able to watch this one in the cinema. Mad Max Fury Road was surprisingly amazing and lived up to the expectations of following up after the OG films. The sandstorm chase sequence is probably one of the most visually stunning scenes I've ever witnessed in the modern era, and yes, that also includes MCU stuff. Some of the shots here are so beautiful that even Martin Scorsese would bow down in appreciation. Tom Hardy also does a good job of trying to break into Nux' vehicle, and I've also got to hand it to Nicholas Hoult for pulling off such a maniacal role. The dangers of the storm really raise the stakes, especially when you see one of the vehicles getting blown to bits in all of 10 business seconds. See, this is why I avoid desert safaris. The The club shootout in John Wick is the one that changed the game for the genre. It's also an apt scene to define this entire franchise. Apart from the obvious shooting and killing, the scene specifically puts emphasis on both John's and Yosef's moods. When the camera's on Yosef, the shaking is apparent and it's hard to focus due to the panic and fear. However, when it's on Keanu, the camera is fixed on him, showing he's focused and aware of the situation. The music and setting are all in sync, the angles are epic, and the choreography is astonishing. And of course, since this was the first installment of the franchise, it just felt so fresh and different from everything else that was being put out at the time.
Like items you're carrying, keys, loose change.
Tom Cruise was leading the way in the first half of this video, and it looks like Keanu Reeves has taken over for the second half. The lobby shootout scene in The Matrix has got all the action in the world, and I've praised it way too many times, but I want to point out something else today. The real beauty of this scene is how calm it's shot. The camera's moving incredibly steadily and doesn't cut often. It lets you follow exactly what's going on, and it wants you to soak in all the cool stunts. No movement is hidden. It's quite the contrary actually, as you have clear viewing angles and slow motion for complete visual access. You always know what's going on, even though this fight would be a rather instant affair. Neo and Trinity come off as incredibly skilled and hyper-focused, but they don't have an easy time at all. This really is the beauty of cinema. Being the #1 entry on this list is a pretty big deal, which is why I decided to give it to the most legendary shootout scene in Hollywood. When you've got icons like Al Pacino, Robert De Niro and Val Kilmer all coming together for one gargantuan sequence, you know you've got a masterpiece in the making. The sound editing is S-tier stuff, especially with the way they make the gunshots sound so realistic. On top of that, the scene highlights the dynamic between Neil and Chris as well. The fact that it plays out for as long as it did, even with the little hostage situation at the end, enhances the tone and intensity of what I like to call Michael Mann's greatest masterpiece. I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another one that I know you're going to enjoy.